Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to the Reiki Lifestyle Podcast. I'm here with Robyn.
Hello, everybody.
And our guest today, Serra Coate, and really excited to talk to you and share about the information that she has in her book, Enlightened Beings, The Awakening. And I've known Serra for a really long time. She actually was a friend of my daughter-in-law's in college.
Yeah.
So I met her way back when, and we were just talking about her oldest is now 18, and it's just, time, of course, and ordinary, but also extraordinary at the same time. So I'm excited to talk to her today and have her share with all of you about her channeled wisdom, energy healing, practical teachings. She actually was fortunate to grow up with her grandmother teaching her these ways. And Serra, I'm going to go ahead and read your bio, but that was one of the things that I was so just excited for you when we first met. I was somewhat of the beginning of my journey with all of this work, and just so happy for you that you got to grow up these ways from your grandmother. So anyway, we'll talk about it all.
Well, thank you. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, we're glad you're here too. All right. Well, Serra Coate is a soul embodiment coach, which I want to hear about what that means, and Reiki Master, author, and energy healer dedicated to assisting clients to deepening their own soul connections through a blend of channeled wisdom, energy healing, and practical teachings. Serra guides individuals to embrace their authentic selves and cultivate a life filled with joy and happiness. Her book is called Enlightened Beings, The Awakening, and it serves as a practical roadmap for those seeking a deeper understanding of enlightenment, delving into the intricacies of awakening experience, the emergence of the new earth, and the fundamental principles of personal vibrations, manifestation, and unconditional love. The book offers actionable insights to navigate the path to self-discovery. So you can find Serra, and her name is spelled Serra. So it's Serra, Serra, Fien, PHINE.com, Seraphine, and of course we'll put it in the show notes. And then you can also find her on Instagram at seraphine.soul. So again, that's SERRAPHINE.com for those of you that are listening and not looking at it in the show notes. So she also has some courses coming up, Soul Work with Serra. I'll let her talk about these, Soulful Awakening and Journey with Spirit Guides. And today we're going to talk about the importance of understanding personal vibrations, how we are energy beings and our thoughts, how our thoughts create our personal frequency, what is enlightenment and awakening, and what is the new earth and how you get there. So I, of course, love these topics. Our listeners are going to love these topics. These are the things we talk about, think about, and develop the skills to be able to get there. So before we go to Serra, Robyn, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, I have just a few announcements.
Okay.
We'll have the Animal Reiki 1 and 2 and Animal Reiki Master coming up on the Animal Reiki 1 and 2 will be January 24th and 25th. The Master will be January 26th through the 28th. And then we'll have Reiki 1 and 2, regular human Reiki 1 and 2 in February, as well as Colleen co-teaching with Sue Machado Reiki Master, and then she'll also be teaching Karuna Reiki in February. So you can visit our website, reikilifestyle.com, to find those dates and to sign up. So I think that's good for the announcements right now.
Yep, I think that'll
But
be.
also, Sarah, and I know we want to get into your story, but I think I saw we're friends on social media. And I think I saw that you recently had a really big life change to kind of dive deep into this as a professional, right? So I know that that's a really big process for people as well. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your process, because it takes courage and, all of those kinds of things to go into that trust and go into that. So yeah, I'm kind of wanting to talk about that as well today, but we'll get to that. It was one of the things that I know so many of our audience can relate to that, and either thinking about making that leap or just have made that leap. And so I think that that's always a great topic to talk about as well.
Yeah.
Well, so why don't we start with your story and how this book came to be? But I know Colleen said you grew up in this. I grew up in this, so start from the beginning, or wherever you feel called to start on how you came to be in this work.
Yeah. Thank you. I did grow up understanding there was more to this world than what people were talking about. I could feel my guardian angels with me. And from a very young age, I knew there was more. And it wasn't really until I was about 12 that I really started meditating and learning about the chakra system, about energy. And in that process, and growing up that way, I really saw the world through the lens of energy and how energy affected us. And I think that really shaped now how this book came through, how I see energy, the energy systems. And life really changed when I turned 30. And that was when I had this mantra that began inside of my brain that said, you're meant to do something, figure it out. And it was constant and incessant, and you're meant to do something, figure it out. It went on for years. And it wasn't until I was having dinner with my friend, Colleen, your daughter-in-law, and told her about this nagging mantra that I had. And she was like, oh, you need to go see Colleen. And I came for a soul retrieval. And that's when I think everything, the light bulb went off. It was like, yes, this is what I'm supposed to be learning. And it was that deep, soul resonance of aha. And then I jumped into learning, Reiki, and studied 21st century shamanism and energy medicine. And once I did that, I learned how to connect with my spirit guides. And this was 10 years ago. From then, after I kind of took classes and learned how to connect with my spirit team, I pretty much just learned from them for the last 7 years. And I learned about the energy world. I learned about how systems work, how I operate, how to heal, how to release, all of these things. And so this book is a channel text by me going in and connecting with spirit and flowing words through me. And I often talk about things a little bit differently because I learned from my spirit team. I didn't learn from anyone else. And so the context of the way I express things may be a little bit different, but that's because they have been my teachers. And it's just now that I am kind of coming out and talking about this and sharing this. And I quit my job, 14 years in the corporate world this year, and my book published this year. And it was a big leap of faith, but it was after really diving in and following my soul purpose. It was, you're meant to do something, figure it out. And it was teaching people about the importance of connecting with their own soul. And when you brought up Soul Embodiment Coach, really I see my role is teaching people to connect within. And that's what all of this is about. It's about finding their own inner voice, finding their own connection, finding their happiness through that. And that's also what this book is about. It's really about understanding personal frequency. What is that? Why does it affect us? The new earth, what is that? And the enlightenment process. How do we understand it? What is it? And so that's what this book is really about. And my courses, they're all channeled as well.
So when you say, we were just talking about this actually. So when you're the other day in our distance Reiki share, what brought it up was the solar flares that happened this weekend and the Schumann resonance that we all carry. Yeah. So when you're talking about your personal vibration, I imagine it's multidimensional. So what do you mean when you're talking about that?
Yeah, there's lots and lots of aspects to personal vibration and personal frequency. And when I'm talking about it in the context of this book and a lot of my work, it's about understanding we are energy at our core. Like our soul is energy. Our body communicates through energy, the signals in our brain, the signals to our muscles. It's understanding that we are energy and that we are first and foremost a soul having a human experience. And that's really the foundation of a lot of this, because once you understand that perspective, that you are truly a soul living this experience, it kind of changes the way we think about our life. And personal frequency is made up of thousands of thoughts and emotions that we have. And we talk about our electromagnetic field or aura or, our personal frequency or our vibration. Really, they're all the same. It's what the frequency we emit to the world. And that's in turn shows we choose our thoughts. So therefore we choose our frequency. So our thoughts are energy. And once you compile thousands of thoughts and emotions, that is what is creating the base level of our personal frequency. And this all has to do with the frequency emotional scale. I don't know if you've talked about that before, but there's lots of great images on the internet if you just Google frequency of emotions. And at the top is like enlightenment and love and joy, and that's a high frequency emotion. And then on the bottom, there's dense or lower frequency emotions being anger, hate, those types of dense emotions. So on this emotional scale, pretty much by understanding your thoughts and emotions and what you're focusing on determines over time where your personal vibration lies, and emotions are a big part of that. And when I say this, a lot of people are like, well, your thoughts shape your personal vibration. And they're like, oh, I don't want to have negative thoughts. And it's not really about that. And I don't want to say that negative thoughts are bad in any way, because they're really important. And when you have a feeling of anger or fear, it's really about understanding those are our teachers. Those are meant to teach us what we have within us that we are ready to heal, and that it's not about denying them. It's not about understanding, we only live in the light. That's not how this works. You have to see those emotions as teachers instead. So it's important to have the full range of emotions and then go into the healing process of, why are you fearful? Why are you angry? And through that process, through healing, through understanding thoughts and emotions, we can raise our personal frequency. And that's about aligning with the frequency of our soul, which is the frequency of love. We are love at our core. We are, that is our true state. And so it's really about aligning. And through that, aligning with our soul, we get there by finding our happiness. Because as we create more happiness in our life, we are innately raising our frequency. So if the pursuit of happiness is our goal, that is how we increase our personal frequency. So that's kind of nutshell. I hope I described that coherently. And, when I'm talking about enlightenment and awakening, I'm also talking about levels of personal frequency, but we'll talk about that in a minute too. But personal frequency is kind of everything.
So as you explain this, then, and we go further into discussion and conversation around it all, you must be also teaching methods or energies that help you do that. So I'm not sure if you want to go into that yet, but how do people access that, find happiness? Because I feel like for me personally, like it's a constant kind of mind management to manage my mind. And like you say, it's more than that, because it's more than just the skill builders, but the skill builders are a part of it too. And for me, of course, I work with Reiki energy to help make that happen, that the energy itself elevates into that higher consciousness and entrains us to it. So when you get that far in the conversation, can you share a little bit about, what are your how-tos that can help the people that are listening today?
Yeah.
That can help them even in this moment, as we're heading into the new year. And I think we're releasing this Pluto
day after Pluto goes into Aquarius. I was thinking that. I'm like, this is so Pluto and Aquarius, which is huge. It's a huge change in such vibration and humanity, and also personal vibration. It's just, kind of exactly where we're at.
So yeah, what you're working with and teaching is right in alignment with the astrological things going on too.
It always works out that way. It's really kind of amazing once you start doing this work. It's like, of course it happened that way. Of course, So, and bigger picture things. But yes, I love to teach practical ways to start understanding what you contain, because I feel like awareness is the very first step. And if you aren't aware of the stories you tell yourself, if you aren't aware of how you perceive things and people and your own emotions, it's really hard to change. So this is really the focus of a lot of my courses. And I have a free mini soul work course, which is about an hour and a half. And it really walks through some of these principles of how do you start making these changes? How do you start recognizing your own patterns? How do you create happiness with intention? And so that's really what this free mini course is about, so that people can understand what is soul work. It's not a term that people know. It's not something that's common. And so it's about first recognizing what we want in our life. And if that is desiring happiness, how do you get there? And that's recognizing the patterns, thoughts, and wounds that we hold that are not bringing us into our true self, our alignment with happiness. And so, yeah, there's lots of ways that people can start shifting, but I think the first one is the desire and the awareness of the stories we tell ourselves about our life, about our relationships, and then leaning into what we want and how to create that.
I was just talking about this. It's been actually a big subject this week with perception and understanding the frequency, the fields of frequencies and which stream we're swimming in. So, we can swim in those lower frequencies of perception. We can swim in the higher frequencies, and we can choose to be in our own frequency. And one of the analogies, and this actually came through in a session, one of the analogies that came through, that as humans, we choose. That's part of our free will. And even though, it's so easy to say all these things like, oh, I'm going to choose happiness when life is easy. And of course, it's hard when life is hard. And so, first of all, for all of our listeners out there, this goes beyond the idea of, oh, now I'm just going to be happy, even though right now my life is hard and really challenging. So it goes beyond that. But anyway, the analogy that came through is that, well, you can, and sorry for all the Chihuahua lovers, but you can perceive life through the view of the Chihuahuas or a golden retriever. and I cracked up. And like I say, for all you Chihuahua lovers, there's some of those that, they have attitude. And so, and then you have golden retrievers that are on the other spectrum of just unconditional love. Yep. And, somewhere in between. But anyway, that ability to become aware, like you say, of what are the stories that you're telling yourself, what stream are you swimming in? Because the other thing is that with those streams, particularly people that are empathic, you're picking up everybody else's energy that's swimming in that stream too.
Yeah.
Making it really hard to move out of it. So can you share some of the tools that you're working with?
Yeah. So to tell you a little bit of a story, kind of directly what you're talking about. And before I figured things out, I was home for a couple years with my 3 young children. So my oldest, he was 3, and then the twins were 2. And I was at home with them, and I often was overwhelmed. And life was hard with 3 kids under 3 or 3 and under. And so I remember one day crying at the kitchen sink doing dishes because, I had to do everything. And I was mad at my husband because he got to leave the house. And so I heard my guides come in and say, focus on gratitude. What are you grateful for today? And that was my moment of when I got to choose, am I going to choose to do this work, or am I going to stay on this hamster wheel of thoughts about anger? And I chose to focus on gratitude. And I chose to think about what was going right in my life, I had a roof over my head. I had food in my fridge. My husband was working hard to provide for his family. And I started that dialogue and choosing the gratitude lens rather than the anger lens, because I was going down this path of being angry and it wasn't getting me anywhere. So I chose to change what I was looking at. And I started to see my life differently. My life didn't change. My life was the same, but I started to see how fortunate I was, how I had healthy children. And that became the lens that I saw my life from. And that's really what changed my trajectory in this work. Because if you can choose gratitude over the other stories, because it was just a story I was telling myself over and over again. And at that time, I chose 5 things to be grateful for every time I woke up. I chose 5 things to be grateful for when I went to bed. Every time I started to get into the narrative of being angry or frustrated, I then found 5 things to be grateful for right there at that moment and started to redirect, because I saw it wasn't about anything other than how I was choosing to see my life. There wasn't something I could fix. I had to find my happiness within me and choose that as my focus. And I think gratitude journals are a great way, especially for people starting out. It's something tangible that they can start choosing something different. Oftentimes we have levels of healing that have to take place, and why are we going down those rabbit holes? But sometimes it's just about getting off the freeway of thoughts. It's choosing to take the side road and that becoming the freeway in our mind where our default is. It's sometimes that has to be the choice. And I think a gratitude journal is a great way to do that. I think also learning breathing techniques like a 4 and 8 breathing, just to change your current state, to give you a moment to think about what path you want to move forward. It's about finding those small things, about making it a choice rather than an auto response as well. I think also allowing yourself to ask, what makes me happy and what do I truly desire, is important, because I think we often don't give ourselves permission to even ask, what do I want? And what makes me happy? Not everybody else, not, what I think happiness should be, but the true level of happiness within us, because we don't, especially as moms, we're always giving. And now it's time to be like, where am I in this? Where is my happiness and how do I find it? And sometimes it's small things, it's self-care, it's art, it's that quiet time to just be still, finding a meditation practice, bringing Reiki in. These are all wonderful ways to start to center and listen to your own voice. Soul work can be big, expansive, massive changes, but at the end of the day, you have to start with these small choices of choosing you and choosing your voice and choosing your happiness. And until that is comfortable, the rest of it, just needs to come in time.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned the 4-8 breath. Can you describe that a little bit more? Because I know what you mean, but everybody else may not. And I think that is one of the basic, simple tools that then can shift your ability to think about what you're grateful for.
Yes. Yeah, 4 and 8 breathing is breathing into the count of 4 and out to the count of 8. And doing that over a minute or 2 minutes just kind of starts to calm the body so that you can, and I know it works with the systems within the body and the vagus nerve and all of that as well. But really, it's just about calming so that you can choose how to move forward. 4 and 8 breathing is something simple that can be done anytime, anywhere, just to kind of re-regulate as well.
Well,
So our Chinese medicine doctor, go ahead, Robyn.
I was going to say, speaking of frequency, it does with the nervous system and the vagus nerve. That is, the electricity, the frequencies that run through our bodies. And if we can calm our nervous system, that does, start to shift things as well. But I like the idea of that also, I think a lot of times in this work, there's this perception that, once you get there, you won't experience anger, you won't experience sadness, you won't experience these other emotions. And that in the way that it's framed a lot of times, that if we just choose happiness, we're happy 100% of the time. And there's not all of these not outside, they're inner emotions. There's not all of these other kind of like you said, these denser frequencies that we experience as humans and that are also, a part of the human experience. They are within divinity as well, right? Of that we are a soul having a human experience. And that it's, honestly, it's unrealistic to think that you're never going to have these emotions, especially when life happens. Things are hard or there's loss or, there's things like that you experience as a human. I always think it's helpful to hear that the people that we think of that are, the enlightened beings that are on the earth, it's just like, well, not all of them are on the earth anymore, but like a Thich Nhat Hanh or the Dalai Lama or they talk that they have these emotions as well. They just, are able to move into those other streams, as Colleen said, or to not judge the emotions that they have, to learn from them, as you said, Sarah, which they're a learning, opportunity. Sometimes it's just like, okay, I'm going to sit in this for a minute and then let it go. There's that perception as well, to not put any energy behind them. But I think that I like that part of this message, because I do think that sometimes we hear these messages of like, oh, we just have to be Zen all the time. We have to have a fully regulated nervous system. We have to be in those higher frequencies all the time. And it's just not realistic. And it's helpful to hear that it's normal to that we have these emotions, that we have these feelings, that we have these life experiences that create these things.
Mm-hmm. It's really important to not villainize them, because it is part of who we are. And if we're denying part of who we are, that doesn't get us very far. It just, squashes it down. My guides had the saying that is, a wounded person reacts from a wounded place, where a healed person reacts from perspective and wisdom. And that's really, to me, what I'm trying to get to, is looking at all situations and perspective and wisdom. And what am I meant to learn from this experience? Because we all come here as a soul in a human life to learn and to experience. And if that's why we're here, we have to go through experiences, and not all of them are going to be pleasant and fluffy. But whenever we do go through them, there's a point. And what are we meant to learn from it? Because if we don't learn when the experience is presented to us, we get to learn it again in a different way. And so it's just going to come back around.
This one again. Here we go on that spiral. I'm learning it again.
Yeah. So I think leaning into the uncomfortableness of it, and like, what am I meant to learn from this moment, from this situation, from this ouch? It just takes the sting away a little bit, and it's not a judgment. It's a learning. That's why we're here. We're here to learn and have fun.
Well, and when you can, isn't that true? And when you can drop into like you said, the healed reaction to things, going into love and compassion, and that this, whatever has happened on the other side, they're going through their learning journey as well. And sometimes that's easier than others. And, there's the realities of hard things in life. And, but agreed that if you can try to view it as much as possible through the lens of love and compassion, that is a different experience than learning or experiencing it through, anger and hate. And it's not bypassing that those emotions exist too, working through them and stuff, but that it is a different experience from that lens than the other lens.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I like that you frame it that way too, Sarah, because sometimes those emotions are part of our discernment process too. Mm-hmm. So if I'm angry, what is that about, and where's the discernment? So the way you describe that from the healed perspective of being able to observe it, step back, like you have the feeling, now you can observe it and use that discernment about, what is this? Is it something I need to pay attention to? And I'm angry because I need to know something about this. Mm-hmm. Or the same with fear, for instance. A lot of times people will say that about, I just don't want to have fears, but sometimes fear is a useful instinct. And the same thing with judgment. That was one of the things I noticed a lot, particularly, I know you were part of Light Song too, and in Vision Quest, where people would say, I just want to get rid of judgment. But we also need judgment. Mm-hmm. So, like getting clearer about that and having that process of discernment about, well, is this a story I'm telling myself? The example you gave with the kids. And, I remember I was around you during that time, and those three boys, Robyn, they were like three of Luna.
Yeah.
They were.
I remember the stories.
You remember too.
I remember, I mean, you have a different perspective before and after you have kids, but I remember the stories of poor Sarah with the 3 under 3 and the twins, right? They were really, yeah.
They're good boys, but active.
Active. Yes.
Keeping you busy. But, using your example of that, of taking that moment to perceive, okay, what's real here? Are there things I need to create solutions for? Is it creating the solution by switching to gratitude? Are there things in the household that need solutions because I'm feeling this way? So sometimes those emotions are necessary, but it's coming from that place you talked about, that healed perspective of, okay, here's some discernment now. And I remember a time, probably my kids were probably young too, and I remember, okay, I'm gonna fix my stories by going into gratitude. And I'll tell you what, it was a hard process for me, thinking about what I was grateful for. Like, okay, I'm thinking. I'm thinking. So it's also like, how do you get there with those? And so that's why I wanted you to even repeat about the breath.
Yeah.
Because that breath can be so simple. So when you're talking about that, do you breathe through your nose through the count of 4 and out through your mouth, or do you just breathe?
I think it's supposed to be in through your nose for the count of 4 and out through your mouth for the count of 8. I've done it lots of different ways, and it works for me. Just getting into that state. I don't know if it's through practice, and I know there's lots of different types of breathing that can be done too. But just that, I find that moment to center yourself too, and focus on your breath, and be in your heart space as you're breathing. But yeah, in through your nose and out through your mouth during those counts. Is really important. And I wish I had that tool at that time, because it was before I had learned a lot of tools, and I just had to kind of calm myself and think about what I was grateful for. And some of them were rather silly, because I was trying to get myself out of that, anger response. And so sometimes there was a roof on my house. And so sometimes I had to start there just to start the dialogue. And then once you can switch the patterns, it's not about saying the words anymore. It's about going into the emotion of gratitude. And that was really the practice at night and in the morning, was really getting into the frequency of gratitude and letting that kind of wash over you, so that when you went there at the times of being angry or frustrated or overwhelmed, you could pull from that emotion, that it was more readily available. And now when I go into a practice of gratitude, it's like I have tears well up in my eyes, and I have this overwhelming sense of gratitude that just like springs from me as soon as I go there, because of practice. But it does take practice, and it took months. I mean, it's not something that just changes overnight, but it's about baby steps, and every day gets a little bit easier the more you do it and the more you focus on gratitude. And I think gratitude is one of the, most underutilized, easy ways to kind of start changing our personal frequency and raising our vibration, and just feeling better, seeing life from that different perspective.
Yeah, and one of the tools that I use to help with gratitude is to notice beauty.
Yeah.
And I've learned, almost like you say, the simple things like the beauty of a roof over my head, like that's beautiful that I have that. And it's, I look in my space, and I think I was answering one of the YouTube comments this morning on now I just need to declutter. And I look around, if you guys could actually see my camera, my view of my room and the decluttering needed. And in the middle of it, I could look at it and go, oh, it's such a mess. And then on the other hand, I can look at the beauty that's here in my room and the different things that are there that I can see. And for me, that was one of the like a stepping stone to then being able to be in gratitude. That, oh, I can just take a moment, notice, even if it's for a flash, take a moment and then get to that gratitude. Because I think sometimes the idea of a gratitude practice being underrated, like you say, is also because it's kind of been a bit of a cliche, like, oh, just be grateful. Yeah. Okay. And then understanding it is a practice. So finding those tools that you have to get there, like what gives you that ability to go into it.
Yeah. And starting off, it's just saying the words, but eventually you have to go to that emotion of it and the full body, like embodiment of the gratitude, because that's that next step that I think often either doesn't get to because it's not stuck around long enough, or just people aren't able to kind of bring up that level of gratitude. But that's the whole goal. When you start, it often can just be words, but it's taking the time to really find the frequency of gratitude. And that's a really powerful place to be when somebody can get to it. And that's where the practice comes in the morning and night. You can't get there without practice at the moment of anger. But once you've practiced enough at morning and at night, when you're calm, when you're ready for that emotion, that's the important part too. And I think a lot of people just write the words rather than going and finding the true emotion and frequency of gratitude as well. I think that's often missed.
So when you talk about in your book, personal vibration, is one of the main themes of your book, is that what you're talking about with that feeling, the emotion of it? Can you share about that?
Yeah, personal frequency, kind of that understanding of energy and sending out of energy to the world, and about increasing your personal vibration through thoughts and emotions. But it also comes down to living in higher frequency emotions like gratitude and moving into those frequencies more often. Because if your personal vibration is made up of thousands of thoughts and emotions, well, then the more time you spend in high frequency emotions, the higher your frequency is going to become. So it's not just about thoughts. We say simply it's thoughts that create it, but it's truly the belief systems behind it, because the beliefs that you hold are what creates the thoughts and your perception of the world you live in. So it's really also starting to dive into, what do you believe about the world? What do you believe you're going to receive back? What do you believe are the stories? And so it's also kind of understanding that piece as well in personal vibration. It's raising your own frequency, but it's also understanding how all of those thoughts, beliefs, and emotions come back and contribute to the personal vibration. And your personal vibration isn't changed just with one negative thought. That's not how it works. It's thousands. And so it's, where's the totality? Where do you spend your emotions most of the day? If most people are in stress and worry, that's what they're inviting back into their life, because that has become, the baseline of their personal frequency. And how do we find happiness? That's where that pursuit of happiness comes in, because if you can spend more time doing the things you love and enjoy and giving back to yourself and being in a gratitude emotion, then that's when we start raising our personal frequency. And if you just keep it simple as just find what makes you happy and spend time in your happiness, that kind of gets that train moving in the direction of increasing one's personal vibration.
Well, and when you're thinking about neural pathways, and this also comes back to the gratitude idea that it's like you both said, it's a practice. And when we talk about practice, what we're talking about is, yes, our practice, like our Reiki practice, but practicing is also a practice, right? It's like a sport. At first, you have no idea what's going on. And then eventually, if we're talking about basketball, for example, you have to learn to dribble, you have to learn how to shoot, you have to learn how to, and then it becomes more and more fluent. So it becomes more and more fluent. That's what we mean when we're talking about practice. And then going back to what you just said, Sarah, with neural pathways, it always gives me this example. So this is really random, but it always gives me this example. When I was growing up on the farm, the front half of the farm was 10, 15 acres of pasture, right? Colleen, I would say about 10 acres of pasture. Sarah, did you ever go out there? But
No.
okay. I was like, were you ever there for either a fire walk or a 4th of July party or any of that? And then the back half was all forest land. And as kids, we used to we would go and explore the forest land, and we would either have sticks or big sticks or machetes, because that's what you have to do to get through the berry bushes when you have this back forest land. And we would take them and create new trails through the different parts of the forest, because a lot of it was overgrown with berries, was overgrown with all different sorts of things. So you couldn't get through. It wasn't just like clear and trees, how we might think of it. And so we used to have to take these sticks and go through and make new trails through the different parts of the forest. And that's the example that it always gives me as far as like creating the new neural pathways, because at first we're making a tiny bit of trail. At some point we get tired and have to stop and go back at it the next day and create this trail. And then eventually, as we continue to create the trail, we continue to walk on the trail is clear and our path is clear, and it's this cut trail. And now we can just get to the end point very easily. And that's what it's like to make new neural pathways, right? At first, it's hard. You're cutting that trail, you're getting through, you're exploring, you're doing all of these things. And then eventually the trail is created, that neural pathway is created, and traveling on it is easy. And when you're in these practices, that's what you're doing. You're creating. That's what creating a new neural pathway is. And when you've been in these other neural pathways, they're made, right? They're traveling on those, like you said, the anger, all of these things, traveling on these is easy. That's where it's easy to go. The path is easy to take. Taking the new path is where sometimes that work has to come in. It's not like, I figured it out. It's done. It's created. It's like you have to consciously go in. You have to consciously go in and create this new neural pathway. And once you have those neural pathways created, your brain is, that, like you said, that vibration, that frequency. Our soul is our vibration, our frequency, and that neural pathway. And then they get easier and easier. And once you have one created, it's easier to create the others in that same frequencies, in those same kind of frequencies, whether it's gratitude or love or, peace, or all of these different like higher frequency emotions that then travels into the rest of you, the rest of your whole frequency, the rest of your whole body, and like that auric field, that Schumann resonance, all of that as well.
I love that. And I love that example, because I think many people think when they start this journey, it's going to be easy and that there's going to be a path already that they can just jump on. But knowing you have to create it, and you have to keep making these choices, and you have to keep, choosing to go in that direction in the berry field, it is hard work. It is choice after choice, but we wouldn't want it any other way, because we have to, one, learn the lessons of chopping down that berry bush to get to the other side. But then it's also about, we have to keep making the choice within us that it's our path forward, and that's where we want to go. Because if we could change things in a moment, it would just, we need the time and the repeated, yes, this is my will, the yes, this is my choice. And otherwise things would get very crazy and chaotic. But it's about understanding you are continuing to choose that and learning as you go, in every inch that you make on that path. That is an important part of the journey. It's not just getting to the other side. It's understanding what you learned along the way as well. And I think people sometimes just want the end result, which I understand, that's life.
Yeah. Well, and there's ways that make it easier. It's like this work makes it easier, lifting the wounds, but also the exploration is a part of it, right? You get to these points in the forest where it's like, oh my gosh, look at that tree. And then the end, the places that we would get to, the creek, the spring, the pond that would, in this grove of trees that was just magic, but then at the same time, there was these times along the way that were also, you have this exploration, you have this beauty, you have, this adventure that is a part of it. And sometimes there were harder patches than others. And, and that is a part of too, of why this, I think, like the Reiki energy, or, like you said, that communion with your spirit guides is so helpful, because it also helps us in this exploration. It also helps us into those entrainment, as Colleen was saying, those higher frequencies. So we don't have to do it. Like maybe it's our machete, right? We don't have to do it by ourselves.
Yeah.
The analogy you never thought you would ever hear.
Well, living in Oregon and the profound growth. But I think the other thing that, is occurring to me as you talk about this is two things. One is the beginning of the path, and, which path you're going to take, because you mentioned happiness. I know for a lot of people, that question alone is what makes me happy, is the exploration to begin with. Like, a lot of people, you can ask that and they don't know. And also, the expectation of what that looks like and is. I know I recently, before Reiki, I made my living as a fiber artist. And I think that's what I was doing when I first met you. And I just recently started taking up crochet again. And I can't believe I'm like just obsessed. And so, but it wasn't something that I knew, oh, I know if I do this, there will be a level of happiness with that. And then on the other side of it too is, Robyn, I love that analogy. It's interesting. I don't think I've heard you talk about it before that way. And you probably have a bunch, but, also then you have to maintain the trail afterwards. So, especially for those of you who live in environments like this in Oregon, we have profound foliage growth. And so when she talks about the blackberries, in 6 months' time, they can be 3 feet deep and 3 feet tall and sharp and difficult. So, and then just the plain grass growth and everything else. So anyway, so back to the how do you help people find those parts of themselves? Because so much of what you're talking about, I also put in the category of self-care. Like we think of self-care as, oh, I'm going to go to the spa and get a massage or whatever. And yes, that also is self-care that then can help your body prepare for some of these deeper things. But that self-care of, well, what does make me happy? So how do you help people find some of the tools to get there?
Yeah. So I call soul work self-love work, because it's really about finding your own inner self-love. And it's really the same thing. It's one, breaking down the understanding of who you are, that you are a soul first and foremost. And so once we start looking at that, it's like we desire our authentic voice to come forward, and we're all so unique and beautiful and different. And it's about embracing our uniqueness and not trying to fit anyone else's mold of happiness or anyone else's mold of who we should be or what would make us happy. And starting to break down that understanding is number one, because if you try to fit somebody else's mold, you're always going to miss the mark because it's always moving. And so you have to only find your own happiness. And sometimes that takes a lot of unlearning because we're taught what we should want or what should make us happy rather than listening to our own voice. And so it is starting the steps of asking yourself the questions of, where do I find joy, and listening and taking that moment to really find out. And then once you know, or you find a curiosity, because a lot of times it's a trial and error thing. Once you go into curiosity of what is it, it's a pursuit of finding happiness, of uncovering layers. And maybe there's a couple wrong turns around it, but that's okay. You learned about yourself. And so soul work is also, there's multiple layers. One, just desiring the connection with your authentic self is one. But two, it's all about clearing out the closets that are covering up our authentic connection. And so there's a lot of release involved in my courses, but then there's also welcoming in our own divine light so that it is more of a presence within us. It has a greater space within us once we start taking away those society expectations and say, no, I'm going to find my own, and just starting to uncover those layers. And asking the questions is a big part of it, but then it's also the reality of what wounds you hold within you and what is stopping you from finding that true self-love within you. Because part of this expansion and love growth and soul work is about healing the wounds that we carry as well. And so the emotional health is an important piece of this, and recognizing that is an important part, but it's only one component of this journey. And it's really seeing how much bigger we are, how much we are more than just this body. We are a soul, not only here, but we are, integrated in the oneness in the earth, in the oneness of the universe. It's so much bigger, and starting to invite those connections and awareness. And really that's what awakening is about. Awakening is understanding you are so much more. And just this soul, this body, we are a soul and we can do so much more, and just breaking down those barriers in it as well. So that's really what my soul work courses are focused on, is how do you start breaking down those and asking the questions and setting yourself free in the process of it. But it's just discover and become curious with your own happiness and desire the connection, because we are so much more.
I love that answer so much, Sarah, because I think that question, what makes me happy, like in my thoughts around it, on the surface thought was, what are the things that I like to do that make me happy? And where you take it is, what is that self-love within me, that's going to be the source of happiness. The doingness would come after. And so I really could hear your answer with that at another level, because it's very, very, we love the doing things that make me happy, but that's not always the answer or even possible. Mm-hmm. Some of the things that we love doing, and we're in different cycles, that the doingness may not be possible in that moment. And that does not mean that we can't find happiness. So I think of a person that is in a health crisis or chronic health issues. And if we take it to the idea of, what are we doing that makes us happy, that adds a level of challenge. where it's really that inner state that you are talking about.
Yes. Yes. And a lot of people can find it through doing the happy things, but at the end of the day, it's only found within.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and you had mentioned that's what you mean when you talk about awakening, because I think that that's a term that a lot of, we have that term has become very popular. And then a lot of people are like, well, I don't know if I really know what that means.
I agree. I think awakening and enlightenment are terms that we just use a lot, but it's hard. It's not often defined. So yes, the book goes into defining those more, and Enlightened Beings is the name of the book, The Awakening. So it's kind of put in the cover of it as well. And the way that my guides describe enlightenment is holding more light or high frequency. So it's about raising your personal frequency to a particular level or frequency of enlightenment. And some of the visuals you can find on the internet by Googling frequency of emotions, at the top, you will see enlightenment as a frequency. And so enlightenment is holding more light. And the more that you increase your personal vibration, the closer you become to that threshold. And so that's the way that they, in a very practical sense, talked about enlightenment. It's a vibrational barrier. An awakening is the process of connecting and integrating your soul with your conscious mind. So it's like the awareness of you being a soul. And so that awakening is just kind of, it's a whole process, and it's not really just a moment in time. But once you start making that deep connection of like, I am more, that's awakening to all that you are, understanding, that once you accept yourself on a soul level, it's you are more, you are part of this beautiful earth, you are part of the oneness of everything and connected energetically through everything. But then you're also bigger than that as well. And we're multidimensional. And the book does talk a little bit about dimensions and timelines as well, because we're so much bigger than what we kind of have thought our human life to be. So it's so much more. So all coming back to, you're a soul having a human experience, and awakening is that desired connection from within, that we want that soul connection. And I believe that humans were always meant to be enlightened beings, and that we were always meant to move to this higher frequency state. And we just got a little lost along the way with ego. And so, it's because we live in this world with both positive and negative energies, but that's because we're here to learn experiences. They aren't bad. They aren't good. They are experiences. And so when you start seeing things from this different lens, it's just a little bit different, because, we came here on earth for our soul to have experiences so our soul could grow. And, it's hard to learn without comparison. So like there's positive and negative and push and pull. And like an example would be, it's hard to like if you only lived in daylight, it would be hard to comprehend night. And it's not like there's good or bad here. It's just understanding perspective and comparison. And so we have both light and dark. And when personal frequency of people focus on negative and hate and fear, then that creates more of it. And so, we just kind of got a little lost along the way. And so now we're in this time of enlightenment, and many people are really choosing these high frequencies. And it's a choice at the end of the day where people, want to focus. And so, personally, I choose to focus on the high frequencies, which is peace, love, joy, happiness, making that my focus and where I see things. But everybody gets to choose, because we live in a world of free will. So, when we're talking about enlightenment and awakening, it's all about personal frequency and choice.
well, and the positive and the negative charge that is a part of the makeup of our world.
Our world.
Yeah. Speaking of terms that are common right now that people may or may not know kind of what it means is the new earth.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you go ahead and talk about your perspective of what that means?
Yeah. So the way my guides talk about the new earth, and again, we all come here with different perspectives and teachings, and this is what I learned from my guides in this is we're really at a big time of change for humans here on earth. And the soul, the earth, her soul is choosing to become an enlightened being. And so as the earth herself is expanding into an enlightened state, many humans are going with her. And so we are integrated, the earth and humans. And so, as I said, I believe we were always intended to become enlightened beings. And part of that process, we're integrated with the earth's soul's enlightenment. And so we're evolving together. And so the earth and humans are requesting these higher frequencies because, enlightenment is on a higher frequency scale. And if they're demanding these higher frequencies continue to come into the earth and into the human collective frequency, and we're holding more light, that means that if not everyone is choosing that high frequency, many people are still choosing low frequencies. And so the earth is being pulled farther and farther apart vibrationally. And so, as these, my guides call them the poles of love and despair, get pulled farther and farther apart. And these are due to the frequencies of what humans are requesting through their personal vibration. We're requesting higher frequencies. Well, there's also people requesting lower frequencies because we have to have balance. And it's just getting so far apart that there is a divide that is happening with the old earth and the new earth. And so the new earth will be where those people who choose the higher frequency for their personal frequency will eventually go, and those who choose the lower frequencies will eventually stay or go with the old earth. And it's not like a ripping and divide. That's not what it is. It's about dimensions and frequencies and timelines. So over time, people will move farther and farther apart, and eventually the frequencies of the two locations will divide. And that has to do with choice and personal vibration and alignment. And so those who align with the frequencies of the new earth will stay with the new earth, kind of as a practical explanation of the new and old earth, but it has to do with the personal frequency and where that divide comes in. It's not like we're going to, anything massive is going to happen. Yes, there will be more dense things here on the planet, but it's over time, dimensionally, there will be a shift and a change where we're just too far apart vibrationally to be in the same dimension together.
So with that concept, one of the questions I think people are going to be asking is, well, what about if I choose higher frequencies, but people I love choose lower frequencies? Are they going to be non-existent? How would that work?
So this is the long game. This isn't like going to happen tomorrow so that it's going to suddenly not have people available to them. This is happening over the next 100 years or so, where vibrationally people will just get farther and farther apart. And right now we do have both the new and the old earth available to us, but the majority of people live in this like gray space in between. And over time and over the next generation, even 2 generations, there will become more and more of a divide. But at the end of the day, only the individual can change their personal vibration. This isn't about doing it for anybody else. This is about their own personal journey, but it's not something that's going to happen quickly. This will be within families. Families learn from each other and grow together, or they there's patterns here that will help contribute to where people go by, time. We have 100 years of choice and divide. So it's not like you can save anybody, but you can do your own work, which then in turn shares your healing frequencies with the ones you love. So that's how you can help others, is do your own work and find your own happiness and share it. And other people often see what makes other people happy, and finding that joy within and that love often can be the difference in someone else making that choice too. So it's never about talking somebody else into it. It has to be an individual choice.
So I'm also curious about what your definition or experience of enlightenment is. Because in my thoughts of myself, I know I've had moments, but they stay in moments.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but that may just be my perception of the word and definition of the word. So can you describe what that is about to you?
To me, enlightenment is a frequency and a vibrational state. So I think that is the goal for many people, but I also see that as a lifetime's work, because we're here to learn. And if we just get there, where are we going from there? Where are we learning? How are we growing on a soul level? And enlightenment is the process we're in, but I don't think it's necessarily everything that we're doing. We're here to learn and grow. And the more that we can contribute to our own happiness, our own vibrational frequencies that are in the higher vibrational spectrum, we're contributing to that, bulk of frequencies on that end. But I guess enlightenment to me is the journey and process that we are going through to find ourselves. And the more that we become fully integrated with our soul's wisdom, that is enlightenment. When there's that clear barrier between the voice of our soul and our true self being that encompassing our body and our voice and our actions, our mind, to me, that's enlightenment. Because that's kind of that fully integrated piece. But to live there would be very hard, because we're here to experience life. And we get there, we enjoy it, we like it, but then we also have to be human. And if we stay in this only light state, we can't continue to learn and grow and evolve. And our soul is here to have these experiences. So we're going to keep having these experiences, and we're going to move that mark a little bit farther down the road so you can keep going for it. And it's also, I believe, we're inviting greater aspects of ourself, the frequency of our soul into us. We can only hold so much until you start clearing out the closets. And so you're inviting more of your authentic frequency into you, your soul frequency. And so it becomes bigger and greater within you as well. So we're never really done, because we can always keep expanding as well. So I guess that's kind of my thought on it.
I asked that question one time in a journey of because I've touched that feeling, right? It's like Colleen said, I've touched that feeling. And it's like, why can't I be there all the time? It's really nice. And they're like, because you didn't come here this lifetime to do that. And it's like, it's the ascended masters. They come here in that lifetime to be that. And I was like, oh, okay. Also took a little pressure off. Like, okay, all right, I'm not here in this lifetime for that.
I was like, I'm not enlightened yet.
I'm not enlightened yet. It's not, yeah. So anyways, I agree. It was definitely one of those things that, that it was a learning experience of like, but I just want to hold it longer and longer. And it's like, well, you're here to be human. So, the ascended masters are this combination of spirit and human that are in their fully unified self. And that's why they can hold enlightenment. And you're not there. So it's like, okay, all right. Okay. Guess I'm still going to be experiencing the denser emotions this lifetime.
So true. And yeah, I notice it by sometimes some of the movies I watch. It's like, okay, I'm probably not enlightened yet. I'm watching this, but I would say for myself, and I can, probably pinpoint a few of the times, but one of my most recent experiences of enlightenment was when I was in the pyramids at the Great Pyramid. And we were in ceremony in it, and we had alone time in the king's chamber. And in that ceremony, the whole group was chanting, and it just reverberated from centuries of people holding ceremony. And I was taken out, and this was one where I would say I truly had an experience of being in my soul and my soul's perception. And so I was taken out through the universe, and I know I was still in this solar system because I went out to a certain part and then turned around and looked at the earth and what you were talking about with emotion. I was absolutely filled with my soul's emotion of how much I love the earth, how much I love humanity, and was given the awareness of I have come here lifetime after lifetime and will continue to come back lifetime after lifetime to continually contribute in my own way to the evolution of the earth. And so in my experience of coming back into, ordinary reality and climbing back through that tunnel, and, now we're at the base of the pyramids and getting onto a bus and going into Cairo, so now you're back into very real world. And I think we even went to a perfumery after that. And I'm super allergic to perfumes, but I actually was in a place where I could do it because everything was so pure there. And just seeing the world from that perspective, and then being in my ordinary perspective. But I would have to say that it's now a cellular memory within me. That state of being is there. And, one of the things that you talked about too, way back in the beginning of our conversation, was perceiving the world around you. And it's one of the things that we've really seen with, we created an animal Reiki course, and it has Tree of Life Reiki energy. And it's one of the things that we have really seen in that, and moving into that love that we are at the core of our being. And as you had talked about, we've moved away from that self-awareness that we are actually incredible beings of love. And we're here on this planet that's, duality. And how do we get back to that core knowing? And so what the animals taught us, and this was through journeys that we've done together and, with Robyn and living on the farm, that the nature spirits, when I was journeying to them one day and asking them, I was writing an article for Reiki News magazine and asking them what they wanted to say. And I was waiting for them to reprimand us and to reprimand me for some of my farm management tools. Like Robyn said, how do you manage that profound growth that happens, it was 30 acres, which is a small farm, but big, and a lot of land. And so I was waiting for them to reprimand me. And they said, well, actually, if we could teach you one thing and people one thing, it would be to love yourselves as much as we love you. We think you are extraordinary beings here. And if you love yourself, then you create from that belief. When you believe yourselves to be destructive, you create from that belief. And so I think that ties exactly into what you're teaching, is to shift from that. And one of the areas that I've had to personally practice is my perception of human shaming. And I've always loved people, so that isn't it. Like, I really like people. Some people don't like people. I like people. But that level of shifting from that constant, viewpoint of human shaming. So it's not even the stories just that we tell about ourselves. It's about the stories we tell about each other and humanity at large. And in my own experience, traveling around the world in all different conditions, being in some of these places where life is harsh and hard, and other places where people live in complete privilege, and myself, living the life that I do of, safety and comfort with my home. And, like you say, there's food in the fridge and things. Through it all, people love. Everywhere I have been, people love. And it is the core nature. And so I think if we can also do that self-love work to see the love in everyone else, even when we disagree with them. Mm-hmm. Right now, there's lots of it. And there's lots of things that, it's not bypassing. It's an activism. It's a shifting into these frequencies to make a difference for the collective, to perceive each other that way too.
Yeah, I love that. And it is, once you get into that perspective of self-love and seeing the world through the lens of self-love, everything does look different. Because then you live in a love-based society rather than a fear-based society. And the way people behave are different. The way the interactions you receive are different, because then your personal frequency is different, and what you give to the world, you get back. So that changes, but it's the lens that you see people and you hold them in love and compassion, and see them for where they are in their life and their journey and the experiences that they are going through, and having compassion for where they're at and how much it hurts, but seeing it as an experience and loving them through the hard experiences, because that is their soul experience. And you can't judge that. We all came here for different things. We all came here for experiences, and some people came for hard ones. And to love them, even though their reaction may be harsh, but that's their life that they are needing to live right now, where I am choosing to see the world through the lens of love. And yes, I know that there are hardships and there's war and there's cruelty, but at the same time, I want to make sure my energy is being contributed to the kindness and the sharing and the community that is happening at the same place those hardships are happening. Because there may be turmoil in an area, but those people are coming together and loving each other and sharing with each other and bringing help to each other. And that's the energy I want to make sure I'm contributing to that situation that's going on, and contributing love to the the people to raise up the frequency so that it has more of the high frequencies available to the people experiencing hardship or war or something that's going on. And it's just a different way to look at the world through the lens of energy, and giving love as an energy as well. And it does come back to perception. And I love that understanding and sense that you brought in with that.
So, yeah, when you talk about the frequencies, and, one of the things that showed up in, again, one of our practicums was the electromagnetic fields in the earth are actually another element. So, like the earth, air, wind, earth, air, fire, and water, that the electromagnetic fields are also an element, and that we can actually contribute to the element of the electromagnetic fields, raising the actual frequency and energy of them. And what that does is they physically exist, they become more powerful. And people do not even have to be studying the kinds of things that we're studying for them to access that energy then. I think that was the other thing that I got to understand about it. And in one of the specific topics that it was looking at was because we had begun to teach Reiki online. And previously, everything had been in person. And how does that work, and how the Reiki energy works through these electromagnetic fields, and the person to person is not required for that to work. And so it was showing how, as we are contributing these higher frequencies into the electromagnetic fields, it actually physically co-creates them. And those innovators into the fields of technology, whether they're doing these practices or not, now have access to that empowered frequency, because I feel like sometimes we're the battery chargers, we're the ones that are, it's part of our job to empower these frequencies so they exist more powerfully. And then, people can innovate with them. And it all ties in with morphic resonance, and how, the pyramids were built here and they were built over here at different times. And that's because that frequency, those energies are there for us to tap into. So
I love that. I didn't know that was that had come up as the earth having those electromagnetic fields being another element, but it so plays into what I know and what I said before about the poles of love and despair getting farther and farther apart, because that's the earth's frequency that you're talking about. And we're demanding more high frequency come in and pulling that in the earth into higher and higher frequencies due to our own enlightenment, the whole process that's happening right now, and why the new earth is coming in. I love that. And that we're all tied in together. We are all one, and coming back to that oneness, that all humans are tied together. We're all linked energetically together, and the frequencies of healing yourself then heal those around you, because you're offering it to them. You're radiating it from you. And if they choose that healing as well, then they can start incorporating those frequencies. And it's never really about making someone else do something or making them understand. It's about just working on yourself. And as you work on yourself, you increase the frequency of the earth, but then also you help heal those around you, because you're bathing them in this healed energy. So I love that we're all tied together.
Well, if you go ahead, Robyn.
I was going to say, if you could have our audience take away one thing, what would that be?
Yeah. I think it's understanding that we are a soul and the importance of getting to know and desiring to know our authentic self. And that the rest of, so much is a facade that we're taught around us. And just to focus on love, loving yourself, loving those around you, living in the perception of joy and happiness, choosing that and the importance of it. Because there's lots of ways that we can all move into our own happiness, and there's lots of ways to do this. There's no one way to enlightenment. There's no one way to awakening. And the important part is realizing you have to find your own way, and that there's lots of teachers and there's lots of people out there doing this work. And it's about finding what resonates with you and giving yourself permission to move into that happiness, and finding a community, finding teachings that work with you and what resonates with your soul. But we all get the choice of where we live, and we're all empowered to choose our own frequency by understanding our thoughts, our beliefs. And at the end of the day, everybody can do this, and everybody has the ability if they just start creating the desires within them. And so I guess that's what I would want people to take away, that this doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be scary. It just is about taking each step forward into learning how to love yourself more and how to find happiness.
Well, and what's great about, speaking of technology now, is that there's so many resources out there.
Yeah.
Or with your book, for example, it's a low cost of entry into looking at. There's YouTube, there's a lot of different ways. And I agree that we say that all the time. It's allowing the right path for you to, sometimes you have to search for it. Sometimes you have to put that intention out there, but also whatever you resonate with, whatever your soul resonates with, because it's going to be different for all of us. But what it's trying to do is get us to the same end point, And so that's one of the wonderful things, though, about technology, is that we can go onto YouTube, we can go onto our websites and have, like you said, that free course, the resources that are easy to come by now for just starting somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's amazing how many great tools are embedded into these free courses and these free classes, because we want everyone to be successful. We want everybody to try it. And I do have a free course that's called Soulful Awakening, and it's kind of the entry way to soul work. It's starting to ask those questions, teach the techniques, start to realign the thinking of connection with self. And we do a meditation where we invite in more of our own divine light so it can expand within us. And so there's great free resources out there for sure.
And that's called Soulful Awakening and can be found on your website, seraphine.com.
Correct. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And your other courses are also on your website. And now your book is available on Amazon?
Yes. And all major retailers. It can be ordered by Amazon. Has it super easy and quick. Enlightened Beings, The Awakening.
Yeah, this is for those of you watching on YouTube, you can see the book. I love it. I was a cover design judge for a publisher.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, where they would send me books to evaluate covers and things. And I really love it. It's so pretty and definitely catches your attention. Like, oh, I better look at that and pick that up. So, well, Sarah, I am so glad Jennifer Benelli is my daughter-in-law that introduced us years ago. And, we've stayed in touch all these years. And with your family, those kids growing up, and our grandkids growing up, and me getting older. So I think I was probably your age when I met you. So I'm so glad that we met, and it's just very beautiful to see where you have taken your personal work and your personal life. And so just to finish up, Robyn at the very beginning said you made a big life change.
Oh, yeah.
So go ahead and just tell us that too.
Yeah, I'm doing this full time now. So I quit my job and I'm all in soul work so I can teach courses and be available to people and really put this work together. It's been a long course of learning and doing my own work to be able to vibrationally hold the work as well. And so now it's about sharing. It's about being out there. And so I'm really excited to work with people as well. I do energy healing sessions on people as well as the courses. And it's fun. It's always exciting and there's so much to learn. So it's all about learning.
Any advice for people who are considering making that decision or have just made that decision?
Yeah, divine timing is a really tricky thing. And so, we have these expectations of time that the energy world and the spirit world does not have. They live on a different timeline. And so it's really about listening. It's about understanding the inner calling because we all have a different time to leap. And just because it's scary doesn't mean it's not right. It's about really going into understanding why are you feeling that, and for me it was a lot of having conversations with my spirit team about what is the right path for me, what is the timing, and it wasn't necessarily the timing I wanted. I wanted to jump probably 2 or 3 years ago. But I had to grow and I had to learn and be ready on an energetic and spiritual level. And so really just lean in and listen. That's what I would say for those who are going to figure out their own timing. There's clear support and ways to do this, that feel good in a human level, but sometimes it's divine timing as well. And kind of just listen.
Great advice.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is a particular energy to hold.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to the practicalities of, being a small business now, everything that goes with that, the practicalities of it, financial practicalities, all of those things.
And I think, sometimes we create these intentions and we forget that we have to change our internal world to hold that frequency. That person who holds the life that we want isn't the same on the inside. And we have to do the work on the inside to be able to get there. And I think sometimes we want to change the outside world to meet where we want, but it's all about changing the inside world to meet the outside world. So that's the biggest part. It's all inside.
Great advice.
Well, fantastic, Sarah. Thank you so much. Again, you can find Sarah at seraphine.com. It's SERRA. And then her Instagram is seraphine.soul. So that's where she's most active on social. And again, we'll post that all in the show notes. We are in her book, Colleen just talked about, find it on Amazon. And we're at ReikiLifestyle.com. So you can find our classes and all the things there as well. As we said, Pluto moved into Aquarius. Once this is released, it'll have moved into Aquarius yesterday. So lots of blessings to everyone. It's all good stuff. So
we're excited
about
it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you so much to everybody who's listening. As always, lots of gratitude and appreciation for all of you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you,
everyone. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you,
Bye
Robyn.
now.